A very good morning to each and everyone that has joined us this morning on this webinar, which is if I say the QuadPara Association of South Africa's way of giving back and acknowledging the contribution of the day that we are commemorating, the Mandela Day, and also education towards employment, which is a very important factor. But let me first welcome each and everyone, and I wish that everyone is safe where you are in this time of coronavirus, that is the pandemic that is affecting all of us, the high impact on all of our lives. The whole world has been affected with us, and here we are today as mostly people with disabilities and an organization for and of people with disabilities, trying to make sense of it all and also to contribute in the best way that we all can. So welcome to each and everyone that has joined us and that is ready to participate. Thank you for the panelists that have offered up their time and their input, which we are very happy to have today. We have Mariska that is taking care of the logistics around this session that we will have. We intend to be busy just for more than 67 minutes. And we have sent out our agenda, which will quickly take you through. As after my brief introduction and a welcome, I will give you a summary of what QuadPara Association is offering with regards to employment and especially our work readiness program. And then we're going to have Lesa Bradshaw, who will take us through a session on the current employment status in South Africa. We have Ari that will have a session also on Black Swan, which is a very informative piece of writing that he has, and a session that we will all find the benefit of. And afterwards, we will have a question and answer session, which will be facilitated by our project coordinator, Ronel. And you had the opportunity to send us your questions, which we will respond to, but we will manage that we have the chat at the bottom where everyone is allowed to send questions. We will field them and we will take it as it comes and respond to your questions. But welcome to the session that we're having. Glad to see that everyone is around here, around the screen and not around the table or in the boardroom as we were used to, because we are forced to go about our business in a different manner. Little bit of housekeeping rules. I would just want to ask everyone, towards the end, we will indicate when it has to happen, to give us an opportunity to maybe have your video on so that we can capture this moment, so that we can capture this webinar that we have today in order to commemorate and also to indicate as to the effort that we have put in and also the contribution that we would want to make. So welcome everyone. Sit back and participate in this informative. I call it informative because that is the aim of what we want to achieve today. Employment for people with disabilities is one of the ways that we can contribute to society. It was Nelson Mandela that has indicated, or not indicated, that gave us the quote of his that says, education is the most powerful weapon which we can use to change the world. And as a person with a disability, we can see that that takes us to employment. It actually improves our offering of employment. But employment, as much as it is a status symbol nowadays, because we can see and are aware of how it impacts in all of our lives, and it is actually a commodity that is decreasing as we continue in this time that we have, that we face the pandemic around us. But I would like to introduce for the session Lesa Bradshaw so that she can give us an indication of what the current status of employment is in South Africa. Lesa, thank you very much for your time, and I know that you will inform us and also capture the audience that we have.
Great.
And
Thank
not
you
only
so much.
thank you very much.
Thanks, Raven. Okay, great. So for those of you who don't know me, I'll give you a brief background. I own Bradshaw Consulting, and we started our business 22 years ago as industrial psychologists. So our work was around identifying the right person for the right job, or the right person with the right potential to fill and be trained to be able to take over the right job. And we were very much around the idea or the concept of we'll identify people with competence or potential first, and then whatever other diversity that follows, that's just an added piece of biographical information. So because I'm in a wheelchair, when I was going to see my clients who were all in human resources and I was selling my assessment services, they kept saying, oh, we've noticed you're disabled. And, you know, we have to find disabled people for our EE targets. Do you know of anybody? And I would be like, well, we don't really hang in groups, so I can't mosey on back to the home and get a couple for you. We are individuals and we are out there in the market all over the place. But what talent do you want? And back in the day, the response was, if you find us a person with a disability, we'll find them something to do in the company. We need them for our equity tick boxes. And so I got a bit twitchy about that, and we decided to open the recruitment division back in 2004 now, where we said, well, we will find talent with a disability and we'll introduce them to job opportunities and try and unlock the economy where persons with a disability can compete and can earn. We then very quickly realized that all the barriers to inclusion that had prevented participation in the economy were still there. So we opened the consulting division in 2008, and now that's where most of our work gets done. So we kind of approach, our whole mission is to get the economy to a point where it is accessible and equalized, where persons with a disability can be recognized for their value and not just for a scorecard point. And so a lot of the work that we do around that is around educating employers around the value of disability to business, like you would any kind of diversity. It's mainly around diversity training. It's trying to shift perceptions about disability and its value in society. And also we do a lot of work around getting people with disabilities and their networks, their social networks, to shift thinking about their own value as well. And so that's sort of where we focus most of our work, and our work with Ari. In fact, it was Ari's fault I got into recruitment back in 2004, because I went to visit him and he said, why don't you start a recruitment company? So I'll get you for that, Ari, because all these years later, we sit with grey hairs and levels of frustration that it is taking so long for the economy to recognize the value that disability can bring to business. Okay. I do want to shift perceptions, because we all know how frustrating it is. We all know how difficult it is to get people to see our abilities. We all know how difficult it is to get opportunities to upskill ourselves. And so I think that the realities are firsthand to many of us. What I want to talk a little bit around is more around where we are now with recruitment opportunities and what this pandemic has introduced, which is something that we can perhaps consider differently. The first thing I will tell you, with the, if I look at my business, enter the pandemic and all business stopped. So there has been a massive freeze on vacancies. So people are not actively out there looking for employers. In fact, there are massive retrenchments that are happening. And we all know the doomsville messaging that it's not going to be easy. I will tell you though, that with that, the pressures of companies being held responsible for not actively seeking out employees with a disability is still on them. So it's a double-edged sword. It's never in history has there been an opportunity where people with disabilities are quite a kind of sexy to employers, because we come with an employment equity scorecard point. But on the other hand, we are recognized that in an economy where we actually can't recruit people because we don't have the vacancies, because we're trying to survive in a pandemic, what happens is most of the focus or opportunities come in the form of learnerships, which I know for many people with disabilities has become a swear word. Okay, so what can we do with all of this dynamic? I think that from my perspective, in preparation for the economy shifting towards becoming more accessible. In other words, as we start to slowly recover and get back to business, now is the time where people with disabilities need to get themselves really upskilled and ready, okay? And when I say upskilled and ready, I mean you need to be getting as much access as you can to becoming proficient in your technological space, which means that you should know how to operate a Zoom on your phone. You should be able to engage with people, to sell, to be prepared for online interviews, to be prepared in your upskilling process, to take as many opportunities as you can to get credentials, work experience, and knowledge behind your name. That will make you more employable. Programs like the learnership programs, the work readiness programs, I know that's not going to be your ultimate career. You know, you don't want to go from one learnership to another, but the realities of life are right now. If you do take an opportunity that's a learnership or a work readiness program, you need to take it with both hands, not reluctantly. You need to sink your teeth into it 100% to learn as much as you can from that experience. And you need to take out of it as much of the tools in your survival kit that you're going to need over the next couple of years as we try and recover from this. I want to also just add one more thing. So just to summarize that, permanent vacancies right now are going to be few and far between. If there are permanent vacancies, you need to make sure that you are ready and poised to showcase your abilities with confidence, because you need to convince employers that you're going to bring value to that business, okay? The third thing you need to do is you need to consider the fact that bursaries, learnerships, and internships they may be the only foot in the door that you can get at the moment. So rather than begrudging them, ask questions, make sure that you're not being abused and that you actually are getting the right type of training, absolutely. But you need to look at these opportunities as it's something that I can do to upskill myself in the meantime. Okay, so don't shoot yourself in the foot by turning down opportunities which actually could be quite good at seeing you through over the next year or so as we try to recover. Okay, I do want to give you a little bit more of a positive messaging as well. I know that in my recruitment capacity, when we're out there and we're presenting talent with a disability to business, up to now, the biggest disabling factors that we have been facing haven't been around the individual and their impairment or whatever it is. It's been around the inflexibility that businesses had around being prepared to do things differently. So I remember with ironic clarity that just before lockdown, we had a candidate with a disability that we were putting forward to a client. And part of managing the disability is they wanted to be able to have flexi time so they could work from home or work from the office. And the client was like, no, we don't do work from home virtual office because we don't have the capacity and our performance management systems aren't set up to do it that way. And our people need to be in our office to keep that team spirit. So we can't consider this person for that placement because they have to be able to come in the office from 8 to 5 every day. Enter the pandemic, and now that entire business is operating with their employees from home. And what that teaches us is that it's not a lack of ability to be flexible and inclusive in the way we do business. It's been a lack of motivation to commit the thinking, the resources, and the problem solving around how to achieve that. The pandemic has unlocked one common denominator, and that's a recognition that flexibility is going to be key to survival, that there is no set in stone business model, and that you need to be able to come up or consider different ways of allowing talent with a disability or talent full stop in your business to deliver the value that you need. Okay, so if ever there was a chance where we can try and reduce some of the barriers that, you know, if you think about it, the flexible working, the ability to work at office or at home or in a virtual space, that takes away a lot of the infrastructural and transport related barriers that we may up to now have been facing. What you need to be able to do is to equip yourself to be the expert in your own solutions. So find out from people, what are some of the opportunities that I can give to the company when I'm applying for a position or for an opportunity that will allow me to do the job, but without the barriers that are disabling me. If it's transport, you can say, well, I have got an opportunity to work from a particular QASA's IT space, and I can use their or the local library, and I can use their internet and go, it's 5 minutes down the road from me, it's accessible, I can get there. So if I can work from there twice a week and then come into the office twice a week and come up with solutions yourself. Remember, the employer is not an expert in your disability. They have no idea of what barriers face you, and they have no idea of how to resolve those barriers. So what you need to be doing is you need to be equipping yourself with the tools to be the expert, so that when you go to the company and you apply for these opportunities, you can say to them, look, I understand we're all in a state of change, that we want to rebuild, we're reshaping the economy and how we do business, like in an unprecedented way. The value I will bring to your organization, aside from the skills and the knowledge that I'm going to bring to the role you're considering me for, is I will also help you navigate how, when we rebuild this economy, we make sure we do it in a way that is not going to once again lock out a massive talent pool of persons with a disability that could be bringing value to your business. Okay, so I'm going to just wrap up by saying 3 things. Firstly, the reality is jobs are scarce right now. So look at every opportunity that you can in order to be able to, if you can't get permanent employment, at least to upskill, to train yourself, to take away whatever you can in terms of credentials and knowledge. Even if it's free online training, even if it's free, you have to go to a hotspot area to download the training, whatever you can do, get as much information as you can to make yourself more equipped. Secondly, become the expert in showcasing your abilities to the client and make sure that they can recognize your value and that you are confident in that value that you can bring to the employer. And thirdly, make sure that you are able to navigate and have a conversation with the client with confidence that says, I'm going to bring more than my knowledge to your company. I'm going to bring the innovation, the flexibility, and the abilities of a person with a disability in being flexible to overcome barriers. That is a skill that I have as a person with a disability, and I'm going to showcase it to you. So as an economy or as a business, you can change the way you do things. I have a free webinar on my website, which I'm sure Renelle will share with you later, but you can go and have a look at the webinar, and it's around how the skills of persons with a disability can really help everybody else in society during the COVID pandemic, because we know how to bob, weave, and come up with great solutions in the face of adversity and in the face of structural and stereotypical barriers that are out there. So learn from us and we'll teach you how to navigate this new world. I'm going to stop there because I know I have a tendency to talk too much, Raven. I can't hear you, Raven. I think you're on mute.
Thank you very much. Sorry, we had the host that was actually keeping me on mute, but thank you very much, Lesa, for that informative session and also for highlighting the 3 major points that you made there. And we can hear from what you have just said now that loads or most of the responsibility is actually on our shoulders as people with disabilities, as to showcase as to what we have to offer to the market out there. And we, at this point in our lives and where we are in society, we are way past getting over the fact of our disability. And personally, a rights-based approach to disability, that is the type of disability or the type of approach that I embrace, and that the association that we belong to and a part of also promotes. And I just want to say, because the rights-based approach, it embraces both the impairment and the disability, because that the disability issues with impairment is concerned with the individual needs, and the disability addresses the social barriers to create that enabling environment that you have just mentioned there. And that is important for us to note. But I just want to touch on one housekeeping issue also. As I look at the participants that we have and the people that is around this webinar, we have an offer for you. We have taken the RSVP list and we have turned it into a lucky draw. So we will have a prize at the end of the session for one of the participants, just for logging on and for participating in this informative webinar that we have today on employment. So enjoy the rest of the schedule. I'm going to ask Ari to introduce the Black Swan topic that he has indicated, and that is a very informative piece, as I mentioned earlier on, and it will actually add value to our lives. So Ari, thank you very much. Will the host unmute Ari?
Good morning, everybody. Wonderful to be active again for part of 67 minutes in this pre-Mandela Day webinar. Raven, in the COO of QASA, thanks a lot for the privilege of having the opportunity of sharing some of my knowledge. I hope my knowledge hasn't become redundant in the last 9 months. I'm sure not, but I've learned a lot already from Lesa's introduction, and Lesa has alluded to some of the things that I wanted to talk about. No sooner than the start of the coronavirus pandemic and we were enforced into a lockdown situation, I gave a lot of thought to what would the impact be for us people with disabilities. And I have looked at the participants, the 32 participants on the screen, and browsed through everybody and see some people are on video and some are not. And clearly the constituency on board here today are wheelchair users. So I'm going to address that constituency and how I feel this pandemic has affected our lives in a positive and a negative way. Clearly there is a negative effect, and that is the same effect it would have had on all business owners. You know, even business owners with disabilities are not immune to the tragic consequences of lockdown and restrictions of trade. But let me just introduce, when I say I wrote an article about the black swan bringing opportunity to disability on the wings of adversity. You know, a black swan is an unpredictable or unforeseen event, typically rare and one with extreme consequences and a massive role in historical affairs. So, you know, you don't often get a black swan. And some people say, oh no, well, this pandemic that's come along is not a black swan. Clearly it is. What was another black swan that we can recognize easily? I mean, surely the 9/11 attacks on the World Trade Center was a black swan. It changed many things. It changed the stock market. It changed the way that the airline industry operates. It changed the way that security is applied on the ground. So there's no doubt that we're in a black swan situation or are suffering the consequences. So what does it mean for us people with disabilities? Well, no sooner than it happened that employers have said, right, we can't go to work, so we will work from home. We are experts at working from home. Surely that's one advantage we have. We have spent a lot of time at home. We know our environment very well. We are comfortable there, and we are very reasonably accommodated at home. We don't want to lose employment. Here's an opportunity for our constituency to put our hands up and say, okay, we now are the best candidate for working from home. You don't have to worry about transporting us or us being reliable enough to get to work on time and to get back home effectively and safely. I believe we're probably more productive in our home environment than people that are not people with disabilities, because we're more familiar. We are less vulnerable to health issues working from home. We can put ourselves in a position where we don't have to work the traditional 8 to 5 or 8 to 4. We can make ourselves available to work any hour of the day. Reasonable accommodation now belongs to us. It's not imposed upon an employer to reasonably accommodate us. I'm not saying that it's an imposition. What I'm saying is we must reasonably accommodate ourselves to be able to work effectively from home. And who best to do that than ourselves? However, it does come with a few challenges. Many of our homes, especially those homes not in privileged environments, do not have Wi-Fi, erratic power supply? Are we secure in our homes? Do we have private space in our homes? And this is where there is a disparity between those that have and those that don't have. But I'm sure with the resources that QASA has, here's a project for QASA to say, okay, if you have a work from home opportunity, then we can help set your home up. We can provide a space where your presentation of yourself in a Zoom environment would be professional. But then, of course, it's up to us to get the appropriate Zoom skills. And there are hundreds of YouTube tutorials to tell you how to present yourself in a Zoom environment, how to best use Zoom, how to manage the sharing facility on Zoom and the messaging facility on Zoom. Transport won't affect us working from home. As I mentioned, your time span and your offering to an employer about when you can and when you can't work can be flexible. There's a huge transport saving for our own pockets working from home. Our care support can be in the background without it being an imposition in the workplace. Sort reasonable accommodation out belongs to ourselves. So, although a black swan is devastating to an economy, it does change the world. It gives us an opportunity to put our hands up and say, we should be the preferred candidates now. Employment equity has always been a challenge for employers. And they still tell you, maybe not publicly, that we are a great challenge to accommodate in the workplace, especially wheelchair users. We come with the square meter. We need a square meter space wherever we are because of the dimensions of our wheelchair and the space that we take. Well, they don't have to worry about that anymore. They don't have to worry about universal access in a workplace. It doesn't mean that organizations like QASA should stop lobbying for UA in the workplace. But I believe we must use this opportunity now, and we must make sure that we are the preferred disability group for employment. Our biggest competition to get employment are other disabilities, people with other disabilities. We must now convince the employer that we are the best employee for employment. Obviously, we need the skills that they're looking for. So, we mustn't just put our hand up to anything or any opportunity. We must present our skills on our CV, but we must compete against people with other disabilities who often out-trump us because their mobility seems more functional in the workplace. Well, now working from home, our disability is more functional in the home space. Having said that now, I'm thinking, don't want to take too much of the 67 minutes available to us. I'd love to see some questions, and I thought I would just then introduce the article that I wrote. And I'm sure, Mariska, you're welcome to share that article with all of the participants this morning. So thanks very much for the introduction and to throw that opportunity to everybody on board about what a black swan means and how we should take advantage of it. Just my last comment is, yes, it has had consequences for entrepreneurs with disabilities, and let's talk specifically quadriplegics and paraplegics. The Quadriplegic and Paraplegic Charitable Trust has offered financial grants to quadriplegics and paraplegics whose businesses have suffered, and I'm sure that Raven can offer that opportunity to those that are on board on this webinar to how to apply for that. But unfortunately, we fall into the same, the same demise as any small entrepreneur or small business. Maybe we need to pivot our businesses and look to what the supply chain needs, and have we got the ability to pivot and produce or service the new supply chain demands. So thanks a lot, Raven and team, for having allowed me to share some of my thoughts on this pre-Mandela Day.
Thank you very much, Ari, for that informative wise words there that you've given us, also as to get us thinking around how we need to establish ourselves as the preferred candidates. And to everyone out there, we see that most of the responsibility actually lies on the person with a disability and the person who wants to be employed, and also what needs to happen for you to become employable. And with that in mind, I just want to quickly encourage and actually market the work readiness program that the QuadPara Association of South Africa has developed. And it is a wonderful opportunity for our membership to ready themselves and to prepare themselves for the market out there, for the employment market. Because this work readiness program is not only aimed at the people with disabilities needing the job, it is also aimed at the job market to be ready to accept and receive the candidates that come out of the work readiness training. It is based on the premise that we have a 2-month intense session, one-on-one sessions, where we prepare the candidate with all the skills required for the workplace. Everyone is not suitable, or every workplace is not ready to accept or receive us, as we have heard now, the barriers, especially the attitudinal barrier currently. We have heard now that transport, as the need for accessible public transport is still out there, but to the workplace, we are all geared and we are all faced with the challenge that we have now. We have to work from home. So the workplace, the transport to the workplace, it's already one block that we do not have to tick. But however, we know that accessibility to services is still central to everything in our lives, especially the access to health and rehabilitation services, the provision for our assistive devices also, and also for participation in education and employment, as well as for that social inclusion. So accessibility to service is still important, but the one for transport, the need for transport is out by the door. So the work readiness program currently has evolved. It will be offered as an online platform, where we still welcome participants to contact the QuadPara Association of South Africa to indicate the willingness to participate in this program. There's a short selection, not a panel, but there's a short selection process to determine whether the candidate is suitable for the program. That takes place prior to the commencement of the program. And after that, once you're in the program, you are settled, and the fact that it is open on an online platform, it creates a wider net for us. We encourage all our users, all our members out there, even if you're not a member, to contact us so that we can give you the information as to how to access this work readiness program. The opportunities are there. The platform is set. We know that we need to be out in the work market. So the job market, the employment market, also guided by the current legislation that we have. We heard now that the Employment Equity Act has to be followed. We know that, but we, the people with disabilities, have that responsibility to prepare ourselves and to present ourselves as the preferred candidates for when it comes to access to a diminishing employment market. The opportunity for all of us, or for those of us who have, as indicated that we have questions, is there. I want to encourage you now to make use of the chat function at the bottom of our Zoom platform to send any questions that you have. We have received quite a few questions from the participants. This is a point where I want us to field some of those questions and to respond to some of the questions that we have received. Lesa has indicated that she will not be with us for the whole session. And Lesa, some of the questions that you have received from the participants, I know that is ready to receive some of the answers to those questions. Would you mind, not mind, before you have to leave us, respond to some of the questions you have received that was sent via the Slido?
Okay, sure. Are you going to ask them for me, or shall I go and find the questions?
I'm going to ask Ronel, that is on here, just to manage the process of feeding you with the questions so we can respond appropriately. Or do you want me to ask them?
I can pull them up, that's fine. I can pull them up if you'd like. Let's just have a look. Okay.
Most of the questions is pertaining to accessing the labor market and also how to market, how to market yourself.
Okay.
If you have them, you can respond.
I've got them in front of me, that's fine. So one of the questions that came through is it appropriate from a labor law or regulations perspective to only employ people with disabilities and ensure that all get funding to work on projects, in other words, their ideas? Okay, the answer to that is no. The reality is that, like all affirmative action, what the employment equity means is it means two things. Firstly, it means that we may not discriminate against people from previously disadvantaged sectors, all right? And basically by that, we talk about Black, females, and people with disabilities. You may not actively discriminate for reasons that are unjustifiable in your selection process. Now, a classic example of that is if an employer goes, well, we've identified this position of receptionist as suitable for that disabled, and they won't consider persons with disability for any other positions in the company. That is an example of direct unfair discrimination. May not be intended because it's due to ignorance, but it's an example of it. So you have rights as an employee or an applicant to be free from discrimination. Secondly, the Employment Equity Act says that you've got to go and fix past mistakes. So we have actively blocked access for opportunities in the workspace for persons with a disability to enter and to compete. We are no longer allowed to do that. So what we have to do is we have to try and almost go and fix what we've done. So you will give preference to applicants with a disability in your selection procedures. So when it comes to answering the questions, it's not about, an employer is not obliged to be able to say, well, I'll only employ people with disabilities. They're obliged to say, we'll give first preference to persons with disabilities, and they can actively go out and seek that demographic, okay? They are not obliged to give you money to be able to go and aspire to your dreams, okay? Again, it's got to be a mutual value thing. So companies are encouraged, they have to pay a skills development tax to the government, and in order to get some of that tax money back, they've got to invest in training and upskilling people, okay? They also get recognition for spending money in terms of trying to get previously disadvantaged individuals more equalized through corporate social investment. So companies are incentivized and encouraged to give preference to people with disabilities and to invest in upskilling and empowering those individuals. It's an incentive-based thing. Okay, there certainly is no law that says you have to give to a person with a disability. The law says you cannot discriminate because somebody has a disability. So I hope that clarifies that question there. If I just move to the next question. So can I just see if in the chat feature, is there any questions that have come up in response to that? I can't see. From my side, okay. From my side, I can't see any additional questions. Okay. All right, the next question that was asked is why people with disabilities are not hired full-time instead of learnerships, and there's always an age limit. I promise you, I feel the frustration of people with disabilities out there. I really do. If I just look at our recruitment division, 10 years ago, most of our vacancies where we were seeking talent with a disability were for permanent employment. along came the whole Skills Development Levies Act, and it basically, the theory is good. What the theory of the act says is that companies are incentivized to employ people with, to upskill people with disabilities, so that you have a more educated and skilled and knowledgeable talent pool that you can go and draw from to fill your permanent vacancies. However, the way that we have structured the scorecard or the reporting has basically said it confuses race, gender, disability, and age into one thing. So if you are a young person who is a Black female with a disability, you come with maximum scorecard points, okay? And the way the company does the maths is they go and say, well, how many points do I need? And how much money do I need to spend on educating somebody with a disability so that I can get the maximum tax rebate back and the maximum employment equity points? And then they work backwards and they go, well, we need to train 200 youth with a disability on a learnership in order to get the maximum points. But in reality, we can't fit 200 people in our employment space to give them work experience. So what we'll do is we'll outsource it and make it somebody else's problem. So you can go and do a learnership offsite with some other company. We can get the tax rebate, we'll pay them to do it, and we don't have to change the way we do business at all. Okay. There are some learnership service providers out there that are excellent and that really will make sure that you get good learning and you'll have on-site real work experience that prepares you to be work ready. There are some very unscrupulous learnership service providers that go, we don't really care, you can come into the office once a week and we'll give you a little bit of work to do and we'll just, we'll pay you anyway, so don't make too much noise about it. And those are people that leave a training program with very little skill, very little work experience, and they are no better off or equipped to be exposed to the workplace. So the consequence of that is that people, organizations, if you've got a quick fix solution where you can outsource everything to another company, you don't have people with disabilities in your company because you've outsourced it, okay? Now you don't have to change the way you do business. You don't need to make your workplace accessible. You don't need to create awareness amongst your other employees. You don't need to normalize disability because that hassle factor has been given to somebody else to run on your behalf. That is not inclusion. And that has resulted in it still being very difficult to be considered for permanent employment in companies because the attitudinal barriers are there, the infrastructural barriers are still there, nothing's really shifted. Okay, so if you are going, there's nothing wrong with the good learnerships, honestly, to get skills and experience, but ask the question, where will we be getting work experience? How am I going, what job site am I going to be working at to get the practical side of what I'm going to be taught? What qualification will I get at the end of this learnership that I can put on my CV? And most importantly, of all the learners that were in the program last year, how many were permanently employed at the end of that training program? If the answer is 0 out of 250 learners, and the year before it was 0 out of 250 learners, if you know you're a token and you can say, well, that's fine, I'll join your program. Let me tell you, if a permanent job comes up, I'm going to drop you like a hot potato and I'm going to go and get that permanent job. Okay. And then companies turn around and go, well, these disabled people are unreliable because they keep leaving our learnership programs. And we're going, well, yes. Okay, your job as a person with a disability is to take the opportunity of a learnership, select wisely, really showcase your talent and stand out. Be that first person that gets to work. Be that first person that puts your hands up to volunteer. Be that really impressive learner that takes your job seriously, because you then become noticed out of those 250 people. And companies like myself and others like us will be so super impressed with you that we'll market you and put you out there. But don't sit back and whine and say, well, nobody's finding me a job when you've not done nothing to upskill yourself. Are you with me? You're part of the journey. So are there permanent vacancies out there? Yes, there are. Are there learnerships that you're going to be given preference for? Yes, that is the reality. What can you do to make the best out of a bad situation? You can take the opportunity of a learnership, you can showcase your talent, and you can market yourself aggressively out there to show people how you have got this opportunity and you're a champion. Make yourself known to the sponsor who's paying for you by saying, hi, I'm on your learnership program. I haven't met you yet, but I'd love to come by and introduce myself because I think that one day I would love to work in your company. Okay, be proactive. If any of you have any questions, you're welcome to email me or contact me after the session at any point in the next 5 years. And I will give you that specific advice on how to get out there and make it happen. Okay, I think there was just one more question. If I've still got time, is that fine? Okay. Okay, there's one question here where it says, are there enough resources for companies and departments where they are trained to work with persons with a disability? I'm going to tell you that companies do put in their budgets disability awareness training. It's definitely up there in their budgets. But what usually happens is somebody arrives, like myself, we arrive on site, we do awareness training, everybody goes, oh yes, you're quite right, gosh, we were doing it all wrong. And then they go back to business and things carry on. Okay, what is the reality? Is that 12% of the South African population have a disability. That's you guys. You are going to have to be the educators. Okay, we can go out there and we can do our training. We've got online disability awareness training going on now. We've got all sorts of products that are out there to get companies to become more disability confident and to just make it normal. That's what we want. We want disability to be part of our normal conversation every day, okay? But you are going to have to be the person that's going to be out there shifting those mindsets. And I always keep saying, wherever I go, my job is to make sure that people see my personality and my ability before my disability. You achieve that, word of mouth gets around, your contacts and your network of influence gets bigger, and you start to be able to make inroads with opportunities that are out there. So do companies have resources? They do budget for it. It's a limited budget, but they do budget for it, and the messaging should be getting out there. But you have to actually make the transformational shift, okay? Because it's your impact with every person that you meet that's going to be determined. Don't be the stereotype, be the one that challenges that stereotype and shifts perceptions. And the last question, which I quickly want to touch on here, it says that I feel when it comes to applying for jobs, companies or departments must focus more on the skills which encourage persons with disabilities to apply. I'm not sure I'm understanding that question 100%, but remember, having an accessible economy is not about catering to your needs. It's about you, it's about creating an equal platform for you to be able to compete. So no company is going to sit back and go, well, what can we do differently? Like, what skills must we create, or what jobs must we create in our business to allow people with disabilities to join us? That's not how the conversation goes. It's your job as a job seeker with a disability to be able to say, what skills are needed out there? And how do I set myself up to acquire those skills so that I can get out there and tap into that need in the economy? All right, I want to be very clear that allowing equal participation it's not something that is a special privilege. You are a person in this society, and you have equal rights, the same as everybody else, to compete equally. Society's responsibility is to level the playing fields so that you can compete. But by no means is it special treatment. It's equalizing treatment. And that's what you as a person with a disability needs to be fighting for. Not special treatment, equalizing treatment. So get out there. I say to my daughter, honestly, in the future, you need 3 things. You need maths, you need computer information, knowledge. You need some sort of digital world access. And preferably, you need science. Because if you go and look at how the 4th Industrial Revolution is shifting perceptions, it's all about getting out there and catering to the demands of the future employment opportunities. I have to stop there, and I have to exit gracefully from this webinar because I've got another one starting in 5 minutes that I'm actually presenting. So can I just say a big thank you for having me on board. Apologies for me sneaking out quickly, and I'm very happy to field any other questions afterwards. You're welcome, Raven, if I could ask you to share my WhatsApp or my emails, I'm happy to take them then. Thank you, everybody, for letting me participate.
Thank you, Lesa. Let me thank you on behalf of everyone. I see some reactions there also, as you can see on the screen. Thank you very much for your time and for your input. and we will definitely share your details, and especially that free webinar that you offered, so that we can continue in our quest to find employment and also to better the lives of all our people with disabilities. Thank you for your
Bye,
contribution.
everyone. Take care.
Bye-bye. Thank you. I do see that we have some of the comments that's being dealt with in the chat session and the group chat, and send your questions. We also had the Slido facility a platform that we used to collect some of your questions. We have prepared some responses. Ari, there were some questions that you indicated that you would field. So would you respond to them if you have them? Because I do not see any that is being asked currently. I do have some that I will respond to when you have done. Thank you.
Yes, thanks, Raven. I'll just pick a very interesting question that came up is, can working hours be negotiated with an employer? I had a quick browse through who's on board here today. Marco, young gentleman, full of energy there. You the type of guy who put your hand up and say, employer, I'm prepared to work any hour of the day working from home. So pivot your routine, change the way you do things, make yourself available with the skills you've got to be the employee of choice with the employer. I think that's really critical. There was another comment that came through. Please explain what reasonable accommodation is. Well, I think things have changed in the workplace. Who knows right now what reasonable accommodation in a workplace would be? And who knows how long this lockdown is going to happen? But let's talk about being able to be employed now, being available for the market now. Reasonable accommodation now, if you want to make yourself available for employment, people are losing their jobs every day, but there are people that are gaining jobs, and we must be in that queue. And that is making sure that you have a private space, as I mentioned earlier, that you have Wi-Fi facilities, or that you have that can be accommodated where you live, and that you're flexible with your working time. So, you define what reasonable accommodation is, and you present that from your home environment, and you present that to the employer. Another question that came up is when asked in an interview what your salary expectations are, how best do you answer that? I think it must be clear that you really need to be bold about your salary expectation. I do think that we often negotiated with, and that people play with what they're going to pay us. But to answer that question, you know exactly what your time is worth, and you need to declare that in the beginning, and you might be pleasantly surprised. I don't think you'll lose a working opportunity, but I do think that you must make clear exactly what your pocket needs for the time you give a company and what your skills are worth. And not to just go and into the workplace the bare minimum just because you've never had that opportunity before. So I don't want to consume too much time. I thought I would answer or address those three questions that came up on before the webinar started.
Thank you very much, Ari, for responding to that questions. We did receive quite a few, and I also will respond to some of them. The first one that I respond to it's actually more a comment than a question. And it says that government departments on the online portals ask too many questions, as I have done before, applying but never got any feedback, especially Department of Health. My response to that is, and I'm not defending any government department, but the online portals are there to collect the information, as much information possible for a decision to be made or to guide in the right direction. And I also have done a little bit of research and to see how the online portals are set up and responded to. But I see also that there are ways to follow up. especially the Department of Higher Education and Training. They've got the Career Development Service Center, which assists learners with advice, especially when it comes to careers and also employment. They also have various platforms that you can follow up yourself by sending a please call me for us for interest sake. They also have on these websites and their social media feeds links, and that can be followed to get the feedback that you need. But the fact that they use the online portal to ask the questions, that is to gather the information. And sometimes we just have to put in the hard yards and to consider doing the research that we need to prepare ourselves for the job or for the career that we apply for. One other question also that one of you have sent in was, where can I get free assistance for career guidance? We know that we all have the need for employment, and I feel career comes after employment. Once you're in employment, then you have a career. So it's up to the department or the employer to assist with career guidance for that for the employee. Most companies, they have employment assistance programs that can be utilized, but it's up to the employee. Once you are employed, if you are lucky enough and brave enough to have went through the process of applying and then to engage with the employer to see what assistance do they have. We have our rights, we come with special needs, as you said, and also that equalization of opportunities that Lesa has mentioned. That is what we need. We do not want the special treatment, we want the equal treatment. So if all employers have the employee assistance program for their employees, so people with disabilities obviously also qualify to be assisted once they are in the workplace. There were two other comments that was sent in, and I just want to respond to them also. Lesa has touched on the Employment Equity Act, and one of the questions that was sent in was, the Employment Equity Act number 55 of 1998 needs to be executed. How will we ensure people with disabilities are permanently hired? Now, the Employment Equity Act protects the people with disabilities against unfair discrimination in the workplace. And it also directs employers to implement affirmative action to redress the discrimination. So that is how it is implemented. And also the skills and the expertise of us as people with disabilities, that should be highlighted, as we have to stand out, not just as any individual, but we should be given the same opportunities. One of you has also asked the question, why is it so hard for people with physical challenges and they have to struggle to go to school, and even if you have qualifications, it is hard to get a job, and now the problem is the age. Now, certain employers, they do specify the age only due to the amount of workload or the position that they are being advertised, and that is to provide for longer duration during employment. Skills, qualification, and experience, that should automatically override the age specification in the workforce. Although we know that there are certain employers that have certain preferences, that is up to them to do, and but we do have the certain employers that are not concerned about age. Personally, do I feel that when it comes to age and people with disabilities, it should be waived, but that's just a personal opinion. One of the other questions that was sent through on Slido is, the job opportunity in the private sector is not much to employ people with disability. Only government departments and NGOs is where most people with disabilities get employment opportunities. Now, as an NPO, and answering as an NPO, we are responsible to change the mindset of employers in the private sector, to give people with disabilities an opportunity in the workplace, which is why we have one of the weapons that we use, and I call it the weapon, is the work readiness program, where we also have the sensitization and awareness training specifically for employers, so that they will be aware of the rights and the privilege it will be for them, and also the benefits to the company as to employing people with disabilities. One of the last questions that I will field is, why are people with disabilities deprived of education and employment? People with disabilities have a lack of access to employment opportunities, even when they are able to get employment. Now, every individual is entitled to their own opinion, but it is our responsibility to change the attitude and along with the mindset of the public about people with disabilities, and also stress the advantages that are out there and the benefits of having a person with a disability employed. And I don't see that we have any further questions or comments. I have to comment one of the work readiness trainers, Chadley, that I've responded to some of the questions that I see in there. And I just want to take this question I see there. One of you said that the work readiness program usually is only for people for wheelchair users. With this new online work readiness program, is it open to all disabilities? The answer to that is the work readiness program has been funded specifically by proposals sent out to attract wheelchair users to the work market. As the QuadPara Association, our target market and our membership is basically purely wheelchair users due to the fact that we are aimed at quadriplegics and paraplegics. We do have partners when it comes to employment with people with disabilities, but the work readiness program is aimed currently in the current form only at wheelchair users, because that is our constituency and that is where our proposals for funding was also aimed at. We are in the discussion with some of the CETAs to see whether we can accommodate people with other disabilities. However, we do not currently have the expertise, nor do we have the capacity to accommodate other persons with other disabilities. Might be something that will be looked at through partnerships in the future, but currently the answer is wheelchair users currently for the work readiness program of the QuadPara Association. I do not see any other questions that was sent through to us. We have responded to all of them that was sent to via Slido. I don't see any here. So if there is any person with another question, we will continue for another 5 more minutes to complete just over our 67 minutes that we set out to do. However, I just want, as I give the opportunity for you to send through questions, also we will have the draw that I mentioned. But before we get to the draw for the prize, let me ask you to consider just switching to your video so that we can have a group photo, so that we can see all the participants that was so aptly participating here. And allow me to thank you for the time that you've taken to join us on this platform. I will also just ask for some assistance with this photo that we want to take while we are getting ourselves ready to have the draw. Wow, it is amazing to see how everyone comes onto the screen. It is really motivating to see how we have the participants. Yes, please. As we get ourselves ready, I've asked for some assistance, so we will have the draw live here, if you don't mind. I have one of our staff members here that's assisting me. What we have is that we have all their names. We have all your names in a container here. I'm just giving it a little stir so that we can be as fair to everyone. And can I ask you just to assist to get it out, please? I'm just getting some assistance. Thank you very much. We have a, thank you. And we have a winner, a lucky participant. And Peter Matloko, that is a person that has won the prize for today. And allow me to give an indication as to what the prize is. The prize was generously donated by the Chris Berger Petro Jackson Fund. And it is a signed Springbok jersey of the test match that was played in Perth in 2017, where the Springboks played against Australia. So Peter Matloko, well done. You are the winner of a signed Springbok jersey. Well done to everyone. I'm just thanking you for your participation, and just allow us to have the opportunity before you sign off, before we thank, I have thanked you before we conclude our session. I just want to make sure that we capture this moment, because this is the effort that we have put in to commemorate the great Nelson Mandela, and also what he has offered up in this time that he has offered up, and we can really, based on his principles that he has, continue living our lives as actively as we can in our quest to improve our situation as people with disabilities. So thank you very much for all of the staff that has assisted, all of the participants. Thank you for your contribution towards this. And let me leave you by saying that employment is important for us, because with that, we can go out and do our bit to improve the law lot. We know that we have major challenges. We have mentioned about the inaccessible environment there, but we all know that if we all contribute positively to society, it will in the end impact on all our lives. So thank you very much, each and everyone, for participating. Thank you for signing on. Thank you for the staff in the back room that have allowed us to have this webinar successfully, and also out to our members there. This will not be the only webinar that we have. We're really considering putting together some topics that we can share with you out there. So go out, enjoy the rest of today, and whatever you have planned for Mandela Day for tomorrow. Thank you very much for participating. Goodbye.